Turn to the camera. Hello. Can you guys hear me okay? Does this sound good? Okay, great. So today was a big day. It got, I'm gonna find the focus. There we are. Yeah, today the announcement came out. The Draft House is going to be releasing Caligula in North America, so that is exciting. But hello to everybody who is here. And I think we'll be talking. Huh. Let me see if there's a. Brandon, is there. Can you look at the volume on this? I can't quite reach it from where I am. Thank you, David. Yeah, can you look at the roller knob on the microphone? Is it okay? Is this a little what?
It's all the way up.
Okay. Is this better? Is this too loud? Is it distorting? Or is it okay? Okay, great. Okay, so Jugendstil 2, bam, how do we do this? There we go. Has arrived, larger than my head. Where's the focus plane? It doesn't help that I don't have my glasses on either. There we go. And they turned out great. They turned out great. I'm really, really happy with the printing. I'm really happy with the selection of work. The Orchid Garden books that we did were meant to be complete. With the Jugendstil books, we're editing them quite a bit. And so it's a really tight group. I'd thought that we would be fitting everything into 2 books, and that didn't happen. It was kind of clear as I was getting halfway through the second book that there's just too much great art, too many artists that people hadn't heard of in so long that really needed to be championed. So I'm looking just kind of for a random example. I mean, someone I'm really into is Bruno Paul. Where's the focus plane? Bam. You know, like here's an example. Bruno Paul. Another guy's Bernard Pankow. There's all of these great German illustrators that so rarely get discussed. So anyway, I got off on a mental tangent there, thinking about the Orchid Garden books. But the point is, with those, we wanted to be completist. With this, we're curating it. But it is going to then be 3 books to finish 1896. So at some point in the next few months, we'll do the 3rd and final book for 1896. I'm writing that right now. I've got it laid out and just putting the text in. So maybe another week of research. I double check. I mean, I write it based on what I remember. And I tend to leave things like years with a little question mark at the end and things like that. And sometimes names of schools and things like that I need to go double check. But yeah, so that's it. So yes, so these will be shipping next week. This weekend is the Oddities Fair in Chicago, and so everybody's going to be there. And then it's packing books, so they'll start next week. Hello to everybody that's here. Thank you for coming. So the big news today, I posted a thing last night about some of my thoughts with AI, thinking that would be something we would talk about tonight. But then this morning, the news release or press release came out that Caligula will be released by Draft House Films this summer in theaters, and then shortly thereafter on 4K disc and streaming. So we'd done the deal with them a while ago, and I've just been super anxious for people to know. They're looking at August for theaters. I think they have a date, but I don't want to say it in case it changes and is not locked. A lot of this is not a lot. All of it's out of my control at this point. So I just kind of hear things like the press release today. I didn't know it was going out today until people started messaging me. Oh, there's a release. But that's exciting. If anybody is not familiar, the reason that we were so interested in Draft House, when I first got the Caligula job, the first person I wrote to was Tinto Brass. The second was Malcolm McDowell. The third was Helen Mirren. And the fourth was Tim League, the owner of the Alamo chain. He just seemed like the right kind of partner for this. So he was literally, one of the first 10 people to know about it. And they have been big supporters of this the whole time. And it just kind of worked out that we were able to get it into their hands, which are the hands that I think are going to do the best job with it. I've had some great talks with, I don't think this is a scoop. This is inside on the salon. It's not a big deal. I've had some great talks with, I don't know, maybe I'm not supposed to say anything. I don't know. I guess maybe I'll say it now that I've set this up, but we've had some talks about doing that Mondo poster thing. And I've been talking to Rob Jones, who is the guy that built Mondo, the creative director there. And he's been wonderful. And so, we want to really treat this like, the dream release of what it would have been when Mondo and Alamo were all kind of in one unit. And so, it's all coming together. It'll slowly come out. We have a fantastic artist for the movie poster. And of course, everybody now knows that Dave McKean did the intro scene. Little by little, all this stuff is coming out. How did I get the Caligula job? A good friend of mine works in the office of the company that does the licensing for Penthouse, and the new owners of Penthouse had someone bought the company and kind of got Caligula as an afterthought, and they weren't sure what to do with it. And so my friend said, well, I've got someone who could come look at it for you. And I did. I looked at it. They said, is this good? I said, it's better than good. It's historically significant. And then the conversation started about, well, what would you do with it? And I was like, well, I would get somebody to do this and this and this. And then kind of as we had the conversation, it just kind of became obvious that they liked what I was saying. There were a lot of people interested in doing something with it, some public, some not. There were some big production companies that were interested in it. But the owner liked what I had to say, and so they hired me to manage it. And then what I tried to do at first was kind of parcel things out, meaning I didn't think that we would be, meaning like, kind of my core team of people would be doing it as much as I'd just be kind of managing it, but it got really complicated. People that are super, people that were interested in Caligula were generally interested in it for reasons that were some degree of probably dysfunctional. Like anyone that is a huge fan of a train wreck like that, might not be looking at it as objectively as I think the subject matter deserved. And so it just got really complicated in a lot of ways. Things like Tinto not responding, things like Tinto not taking it seriously. So the people that I thought I would just be kind of helping get into the seats of this didn't happen. And it wound up being that at the end of it, it was the people that I had been working with on our own films, meaning, Aaron edited the movie, Troy did the music, John Lipishak oversaw and did all the VFX stuff and was kind of managing the cleaning. So it kept falling in my lap, and then it became like a cat that fell asleep and prevents you from getting anything else done. I wasn't able to really efficiently do anything for 3 years except just wake up and stumble into the room with all the the notes and the computer and hard drives and just live in ancient Rome. I used to say every day, I'm headed to ancient Rome. Yeah, they just put a link up to Troy's website. He's great. The music in this is so good, is so good. Like there's no question that from the sound design to the music to the pacing of the editing to the tweaking of the effects to the the incredible opening and even just the grading and things like that at the end. The team that worked on this was just outstanding. And I was really fortunate that I had great people around me. And so that was kind of the big thing. And I'm kind of bouncing off a lot of things because it's like I'm trying not to talk shit about anybody, but I also want to be sincere in this forum. A lot of the people at the front end that were wanting to come into this are people that'll be vocal now on the internet about, this guy, meaning me, shouldn't be doing this. It should be people that are super fans. And it's like, well, the problem is the super fans were a little weird. And, at the end of the day, like this should be, I like Tinto Brass's movies for what they are, but I think that this movie is going to be better than anything he's done. And if he was the auteur that people say he is, it's like, well, then where are the other movies that were outstanding? Like you can look at Malcolm McDowell and you can look at Helen Mirren and you can look at Danilo Donati and you can look at all these people and there's clearly this huge body of extraordinary work. And I think that Tinto is a unique kind of artist. And I think that the clash of personalities made this film inevitably doomed. And I think that if there had been a strong producer back in that mix, there would have been a way to get people to work together. I do think what Tinto would have done would have been different than what we did. I think that there could have been a good movie back then, but I think that the idea that leaving him to just do his thing with it wouldn't have been the answer. I think that it would have taken someone to pull it a little more commercially. And when people say, well, that's not what you should do to an artist, it's like, yeah, but it was the most expensive independent film in history. And if you're going to take that kind of money, I think that you have an obligation not to consciously try to push people away. To me, that's like a posturing kind of art. I feel like, I'm going to use Jodorowsky as an example. I think there's a way to be really challenging, but also really engaging. And so I think that that's what we tried to do with this edit, is look at it that way. And so again, I don't want in any way, sometimes Tinto's fans will say, why do you hate Tinto? I don't. I like what he does. I think that there's a lot of bands like that. When they're with a good producer, they produce incredible work. And then they get big and then maybe they do their own thing and it's not as good. I just think Tinto needed a good producer. I think that he had a lot to offer creatively. And I think that this movie wouldn't have been the crazy mix that it was if you didn't have Gore Vidal and Bob Guccione and Tinto Brass, like three men that just never would survive alone in a raft on the ocean. I mean, they would kill each other in 3 minutes. But it made for this really bizarre and beautiful potpourri of materials. And unfortunately, the man who was like the film producer, Jack Silverman, was very gentle. He was a very gentle man in terms of did not have the personality or endurance, from what I am told, that these other men did. And so he just kind of shrinked away from it instead of wrangling it. He was an ad guy. He was a New York ad guy and not someone used to dealing with really strong personalities. So anyway, so that's just kind of what happened back then. And then as far as what happened now, like I said, it became one of those things where it was like, it was easier to call people like Dave McKean that are super pro and just say, hey, can you work on this with me? It was very easy to call someone like Troy that's super pro and just say, hey, this is what needs to happen. And so Aaron and I talked about the story. Aaron was physically doing a lot of the scanning. So by the time it was time to edit it, he was the only person that had watched the footage as much as I had, which made it really easy in terms of our shorthand of banging it into a shape. And we got it to a 3.5 hour cut. Maybe it was almost 4. The way the script was written, it really wanted to be a 4-hour film. They were aiming for that Ben-Hur, Cleopatra, huge, long 1950s epic thing. And Aaron and I just looked at each other and we were like, it has to be under 3 hours. Like when people say it's long, it's like, man, you have no idea. Like the script was, it's a long story. There's a lot going on, and these big, beautiful vistas that need to breathe. David, I see your quote about 3 strong leads and no one to corral them. Yeah, I look at this like it's like if you because I'm more rooted in music. To me, it's like when you hear about a band where everybody fucking hated each other, but the music was great. You hear that about the Who, that they used to get into fist fights in every rehearsal, and so. In a perfect world, someone would have corralled them. It didn't happen. And so the only thing that I tried to do is I tried to respect each of them equally and put the flag in the middle and really try to listen. And luckily, there's been so many interviews over the last 50 years with these people that I was able to understand. I watched documentaries on Gore and Bob and Tinto, and read all the interviews I could, and there was common ground there. They all wanted a spectacle. They all wanted something that felt larger than life. I love that Neil Gaiman quote: "A story need not have happened to be true." And so the thing, some of the stuff that's funny is Bob Guccione, and oh my God, he just says in every interview, like, this is the most historically accurate view of Rome. And then, like, in my mind, I'm working the documentary, and then we cut to the decapitation machine. That's like how historically that's not very accurate. The three-story elevator, I don't know that any archaeologists have found that yet. So it's just kind of funny, like the weird disconnect between what people were saying and what they were shooting. So we did look at it. The Aaron complimented me on this. He said this is when it opened up for him too. When I said we have to look at this like it's a 1970s graphic novel. We have to pretend Jodorowsky wrote a graphic novel and got Mobius or someone to illustrate it, and it is a history adjacent version, a timeline adjacent version. And then we just played into the archetypes and just followed Malcolm's performance. That was really all we could do. And I've got to credit Aaron with that. Aaron is the one that, as we were debating it back and forth, I know he's the first one that brought that up. He's like, look, at the end of the day, that's the only way through this mess is to just, build everything around him. And then, I know we both said it when it was happening. The reason I think I'm crediting him with it is he helped me a lot, because there's so many things in the footage, like I really enjoyed in the jail cell. There's footage of them like panning through the prisoners that are chained to the wall and things like that. And some of that footage to me was so interesting. And then there was, just from like the torture parts, there's extended periods of that. And just so many things that really were visually interesting. And that's kind of more where it gets into our almost 4-hour cut, where it was like some of that, was in there because I wanted to see it. And Aaron was like, but it's not following Caligula. It's not following what Malcolm is doing. And it became that thing of, if we want to get this to under 3 hours, we got to ride Malcolm. We got to he's the, if we're the FBI, he's the perp in the crowd that we're just fixating on. We have to stay with him. And yes, David, about Fleetwood Mac's rumors. Big Fleetwood Mac fan, and that was a terrible situation from everything I've heard and read. And then, so one of the things that kind of ties this together with some of what I was going to talk about with the AI stuff is that there's always been this adversarial relationship between commerce and art. And I think that when you look at people that have become legends, I'm going to use music allegory again. Like someone like a David Bowie learned how to ride that dragon. They put the saddle and the harness on it. I remember when I first read that Mick Jagger had a business degree. Well, it makes sense when you find the creatives that don't fear nurturing that relationship. And I think of the great number of artists that I know that turn up their nose at the idea of anything commercial. And I feel like that's very entitled, because you're asking for money. And so if there's going to be an exchange, and this is a little metaphysical, it's like, well, what's the exchange? And the idea that what you have to say is so important that people should just give something to you. I feel like that's how my kid talked when he was maybe 5. And you're supposed to grow out of that, And I know that when I was young, when I was in high school, like I had that belief that everything I had to say was important. But it's like, what's the relationship? Do I think that you need to show up publicly on social media for people if you're an artist? Absolutely not. But do I think that if you decide that what you're going to do is bang pots and pans and then be angry that the world doesn't recognize your genius, you've made a decision. Like the garden that you're sowing is going to be other people that think banging pots and pans is a good idea. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. You should do that if that's what you feel is right. The problem for me comes when there's an entitlement attached to that, which is why can't you see how special I am? And that I fundamentally disagree with, because I think it's everyone's right, if not requirement as a human being, to express themselves as truly as they possibly can. But the world doesn't owe you anything for that. Like that's your relationship with yourself, with your higher power, with your deepest self. That's your responsibility on a personal level. And so when someone says, yes, but you should pay me for this, it's like, okay, but you're not doing it for anyone but yourself. It's the most egocentric thing that you can do, to be working purely for yourself. And I get the punk rock, anecdote of, the GG Allin mindset, fuck everybody else. But again, if you're asking for money, now you're asking someone for something, like what's the relationship there? And how do you examine that? I think that the best writers, I'm just thinking of the authors I love. They're saying, hey, this meant something to me. And if I can find a way to express it, maybe it'll mean something to someone else. And the best artists are unapologetic about it. They're saying, this is what I've learned, and I'm trying to share this. And if it works for you, great. If it doesn't, that's okay too. But then you get someone like a Stephen King, or a Mick Jagger, or a David Bowie, or a Bruce Springsteen, or whoever, love or hate their music. They're saying, I'm going to hone my craft so much that you may not like what I do, but you can't argue that I'm really doing my best to share my experiences with others. And do I love, my Ryuichi Sakamoto albums? Of course I do. Do I love Bruce Springsteen? It's funny, I never liked Bruce Springsteen. And I was like, I got to get into this. I got to figure out what this is. And I had done this same thing with David Bowie a few years earlier. So something I would recommend, there's probably a lot of artsy people listening to this that are like, oh, I hate Bruce Springsteen. But I'm going to say this. I think this is interesting. Buy the first album and just listen to the first album. I did this with him. I did this with David Bowie. And just don't move on until you really get it. And then get the second one and do that again. And the thing that's interesting about Bruce Springsteen is he was like a beat poet. He was like Tom Waits, and he knew that he was at the cusp of having a kind of cult career or being able to widen his audience. And so then he wrote the Born to Run album. And then you can see when you come into it, there's songs like Jungle Land that I'd never heard or got into that end the album. It's prog rock. It's like a folk music version of prog rock. It's like a 9-minute opus that is constructed like something from a Yes album. And I love that he slipped that in. And so he wasn't just a bar rock guy. He was a beat poet, and he figured out how to pull that into popular consciousness. So anyway, that's my little Bruce Springsteen side thing. Yes, and of course, Patti Smith is another genius. But so coming into that, we are so far off topic now. But the thing that I was just getting at with AI, with Caligula, with all of this, is that, I think that the artist's responsibility is not to go so far off of the planet that you don't leave a doorway for someone to follow you. And I think ultimately that speaks to why I work on the books that I do, and why I try to create the music and films that I am, and why I was happy to work on Caligula. I think that, I'm going to shift this to AI because, again, this whole thing is unedited and very all over the board. But my whole thing with AI is that we as a culture, I don't know if you read the post that I made, but as a culture, we've nurtured this garden of how cheaply and how quickly things can reach people. And everybody's attention span gets narrower and narrower and narrower. And so the idea that a meaningful relationship between an artist and an audience, like, to me, that's so sacred. And the idea that there's entitlement is starting to, I think it's going to bite everybody in the ass. I think that right now you have all of these corporate megastructures that view entertainment as content. And if that's true, if you follow that logic, then of course your job is in danger, because the structure that's been built is not about spirituality. It's not about human interaction or exploration. It's about what music can play behind your cute cat video on Instagram. What television program is great background noise while you're cleaning the house. And no one, well, I shouldn't say no one. Chet Zar's on here. He probably does it. I was going to say no one puts on a Jodorowsky movie to go clean the house, but Chet, you're weird enough to do that. But that's the thing, is you sit and you watch a movie like that and you take it in and you put on an album like, I don't know, Court of the Crimson King or whatever it is, and you wind up being served. I mean, Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars. Oh, Diamond Dogs is a great album for this. If you sit and listen to it like the concept album it was intended to be, it's so much better than just hearing the songs. I knew, Chet, I knew. And that's the thing, is we're no longer in the 3-minute pop song zone. We're in the 30-second Instagram video zone with our music. And there was some country singer, I don't remember who it was, but I just remember the anecdote. He commented, this is, God, 10 years ago. He talked about what a 7-inch single would have sold for when he started 30 years earlier. And he said, we're at the point now where you can buy my new song for the same price as an app that makes fart noises for your iPhone. And he's like, that's just where I feel like the music industry is right now. And, I mean, he was right. He's right. That's where we are with music. It's where we are with movies. Look at these huge blockbusters. And, I was so thrilled that Godzilla -1 did so well. I thought it was a great movie. No interest in seeing the other Godzilla one after seeing Godzilla -1, because, I'm reminded how important story is, and how far we've come from that. So anyway, so my whole thinking with AI is that it's automation, and how many of us were in an uproar when automation hit the car industry? And the answer is none. If you were working class, physical labor, you were really upset. But all of the artists were busy like, oh, I'm banging pots and pans, and fuck those mechanic guys. It's like, well, now it's come for us, And if you just say, well, we can't use any kind, it's not artificial intelligence. It's not smart. We can't use accelerated computing speeds. That's what it is. It's supercomputers. Well, the idea is that, do you think that Disney's going to stop using them? Do you think that the companies that are doing ad algorithms for social media are going to stop using them? The answer is no. And so we have an opportunity as artists, as a creative community, to utilize these things infinitely more responsibly and ethically. And I think that the playing field is leveled immensely. I think it is. I think that I don't want to speak about too many political things, but there are parts of the world where there are regimes that have kind of an elite access to technology and a public that do not. And the advent of some of this computing is that it's available now to far more people in far more strata of society. That's a powerful thing. That's a beautiful, beautiful thing. That is an equalizer. So for us as artists, you should be tapping into things that can use advertising algorithms. You should be utilizing technology to free yourself up to be attacking another part of the problem. You should be using it to shake some of your thinking. I've been using some of the Chat GPT stuff to help with marketing because I'm too close to it. When I start wanting to talk about marketing an art book, I think about what color socks the guy liked to wear. I can't help it. I'm too close to it. Whereas sometimes if I ask general questions, it's just completely neutral. And the problem I've had is when I've tried talking to marketing people, there's just such a learning curve. And to be honest, this is a whole other thing. This will be kind of, I think, it's another tangent, but it's an important one. My internal voice is pretty aggressive. So when I say a lot of these things, it's not how I feel about someone external to me. It's the way that I talk to myself. When I get down, I ask myself the question, like, how fucking smart are you? And the answer is, I'm pretty smart. And it's like, okay, then stop worrying about it and figure it out. Like, just take the time, lay it out, break it down. I treat it like a game. I treat all of this like a game. To me, this is the Dungeons and Dragons of the real world. This is the video game of the real world. So here's the thing. I've hired 3 different PR people at different points, like in a larger, more meaningful way. And in every case, they did a terrible job. 2 of them misspelled the names of artists in the releases that they were sending to me. One of them consistently misspelled my name. And I just think, how low does your internal bar have to be that you're not applying that focus? That you're treating this like a job. So when people are saying, oh, this technology is coming for my job, my question would be, okay, but are you in a culture where the lowering of that bar has become acceptable? There's an article that came out today. I don't want to trash the guy, but the press release that they released was really beautifully written. But one of the articles I read, I was like, there's grammatical errors. He missed key points in the press release. And it's like, how are, like from a journalistic point of view, from an editorial point of view, from a press point of view, and even when it comes to art stuff, we all know artists that are phoning things in to varying degrees. And, where's your rallying cry internally to just say, no, I need to do something deep and thoughtful and, and find a way to make it accessible. I mean, I'm going to say this, I would say this if you weren't here, but I am going to say, Chet, to me, you're a really good example of someone that does all those things. I think that your work is very personal. I think it's very unique. I think it's very you. I think that things, like the world that you've built is incredibly dense and enticing. But there's also a way that you've made it easy for people to come into. I'm using you as a positive example of, I know it's hard work. I know it's exhausting, but I think you're killing it. I think you're doing great. You don't need me to say that, but I'm just saying if other people on here don't know your work, I would say Chet Zar is someone to look at. He's doing everything right. And, so how do we raise our own bar as creatives and say, I'm going to really do genuinely deep cutting, meaningful work, find a way to put this in front of people in a way that Like your work can be alienating, but it still can be presented in a way that lets people get into it. And all of this technology should be utilized for our benefit. I mean, Chet, we should talk more about this because I'll tell you what we're doing. We're paying for ads. Like I read that thing about Netflix paid Facebook $100 million to scour everybody's personal emails to be able to tailor their advertising. Okay, so this data exists. And I get the moral part where people are saying about like AI is terrible, it scrapes information. Well, it scrapes all your personal information. Being upset that it's scraping artists' work is like, that's the least of our problems. We have an election coming up, and 85% or more of our population won't be able to tell the difference at the drop of a hat if something is fake or not. I mean, as artists, we're probably tuned in a little better to what some of that looks like, but the technology is getting so good a year from now, we won't be able to tell. No one can tell. I mean, we used AI in the restoration of Caligula. So I was eyebrow deep in that technology, and it is beautifully fascinating and incredibly terrifying. If I had an unlimited budget, not even unlimited budget, if I had a moderate budget and was a legitimately bad actor, I could do unquestionable damage to this country. And that's a hard thing to say, knowing now that we're talking about these conglomerates whose only focus is financial. And so they've got the money, they've got these things. And I think if I know I could do it, like what could someone do that was really motivated to? So that does scare me. So when people are upset about this AI art stuff, I really feel like that's more of that narrow thinking. Like this is like we live on a planet with all kinds of people and nuclear power plants and drones and it's the danger isn't that you're going to lose your job as a copywriter. The danger is that we wind up living in a totalitarian planet. And that's not conspiracy theory talk. Like the technology is there, and the people that are utilizing it willingly are motivated by money and power, and it's just shifting further and further and further. So I just feel like as creatives, we can't point to the swords on the ground and say, well, I disagree with that. Like, there's a quote that I love. It's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. Like, there's a great Henry Rollins quote. Like, this is what Joe Strummer prepared you for. This is the rock and roll moment. This is the point where it's like we have to say as creatives, yeah, we're going to use this technology as well. The technology is mindless and neutral. And I think the corporate bean counter types are eminently more replaceable than the people that can look at things in an abstract and can look at longer narratives and can look at not just potentials, but the ways that humans interact with each other, which is so complicated and often, if not always, unpredictable. And so I do feel empowered by that. And I feel like, every time I saw the thing that was going around that really made me think of this was someone saying that he was going to become like a bridge worker or something because that was like a more secure job than being an artist. And I'm thinking, you don't think they're working on machines to automate that? Like, of course they are. Like, at what point do we draw the line in the sand? Like, look at what social media is. Look at like how much people have their faces buried in their phones and how much everyone's attention span is so narrow. So anyway, that's my personal challenge to myself. That's my challenge to other artists is don't isolate. Like let's dive in on this. Like let's take this, like grab the microphone. how do we do this? And so chat, like, one thing I'll just say to you, advertising has been great for us. We're putting money in to utilize some of this machine, the matrix bots that know which people are going to be like-minded. It's kind of like, maybe it used to be that a great book quote, or a testimonial from someone would kind of cut through some of the noise and find the audience. Well, at this point, you don't even need that anymore, because anyone who hasn't seen The Social Dilemma needs to watch it. There are digital avatars of all of us in that huge, weird matrix space. And so if you are asking the question, who are the people that do A, B, C, and D and love E, F, G, and H? It's all out there. So, step one. Okay, Jetson, I've been seeing your ads everywhere because we're spending money on advertising. So one of the things that happened with this is I was telling the investors on Caligula, I've been giving them a lot of advice that they've not been taking. And I was thinking, wait, if this really is good advice, why don't I try this on my own stuff? And so I have been, and it's been working great. In that case, I'm just paying for Facebook ads, and kind of trying to tailor the content a little bit, and content meaning the ad. And someone might say, oh, this is another thing. The reason I use ChatGPT to write some of those ads is because I was getting too flowery with it. I was writing to someone the way that I would talk to someone in person. That doesn't work when you're scrolling past at 90 miles an hour. And so some of the language that's in there, when I look at it, I'm like, God, this reads so dumb. But it reads simple. It's not dumb. And then what it's helped me realize is that now some 22-year-old that would love the Muka Pater book, for example, isn't experiencing any tiniest percentage of isolationist snobbery. And it's not anything that I ever want to do, but it's like insider baseball. You start talking about, even using the phrase Art Nouveau can be confusing to people. People don't often know the difference between Art Nouveau and Art Deco. And so recognizing that the real entry point for the Le Pater book is mysticism. It is the fact that it's meant to be a transformative work of art. And I've tried to expand around it to create a larger understanding of how to utilize it as a ritual transformative thing. And I say thing meaning whether it's the book or the artwork or even just the words. And so it's helped get me out of my head a little bit to use some of the AI conversationally, just to hear things said in a different way. And then with Facebook, we're just advertising. We're just putting it in. We're just going wide. And the computer does the work. So AI is not an artificial intelligence. It's a phrase that's used, but the way that it was explained, Tristan Harris is the guy to go to for this stuff. The way that it was explained to me was that imagine the house next door has 10 people that are just as smart as you, no smarter. But for every day that you live, they live for 2,000 years. And you look at what we've developed on this, in our society, in that time frame. So now then, what happens then when it's a week? Well, now it's been 14,000 years, right? Do you know what I mean? So you're starting to accelerate the learning beyond just what humans can keep up with. You know, the quantity of data that can be logged, the quantity of data that can be analyzed. It's not that it's smarter, it's that it's faster and eminently faster. The things that you want to do, painting, playing piano, writing a book, you know, those things you should be doing in real time. But things like some of the marketing and things like that, I think that those tools are incredibly valuable. And so for me, what it's done is it's allowed me to see an increase in income, which affords me more time to take a greater amount of care and detail with the work that I want to do, because I'm spending less time figuring out how am I going to sell 5 books today, and more time thinking, how can I approach this story in a meaningful way? And so I feel like that's the utopian ideal, like that we should be, it shouldn't be that a few people have a fuck ton of money and then the rest of us are just struggling. It should be that we're utilizing the technology to remove some of the acts of like navigating a million people to find the 1,000 that are most likely to be tuned into you. We all love hanging out at conventions and meeting people and doing that, and it's kind of the same thing. It's the evolution of that, I think. It used to be that you could be at Comic-Con and people would see your booth, and then the people who loved it would gravitate towards you. Well, how do you do that on a national level, if not global? On a national level, you ask the people next door that lived 2,000 years for every one of your day. You basically are saying to them, hey, today, could you spend 2,000 years on this? And they go through and they find the people. And it's not perfect, but it's been serving me as a creative person. And so I would just challenge people that have this attitude of, like, I get it. Like when people are like, fuck AI, I get it. Purely from the idea of art as an artwork, I totally get it. And on that, I agree. But that's not what it is. It's kind of like if you got a leak in the ceiling and you just keep putting buckets under it. It's like the problem isn't the drip that's coming down. The problem is the hole in the roof. The problem is that we, as artists, have been backed into a corner where people don't get compensated for creative work. And part of it is we've all co-signed this structure where faster and better is what's applauded. And we've built an audience for that. We've built an audience that likes things, dumber and more accessible, and I love that, it's old, but I loved that John Waters quote about if you go home with someone and they don't have books, don't fuck them. Like, let's make books cool again. Like, I love that. I think, yeah, it needs to be that. It's like in this country, we've got this thing of it's like, it's cool to be stupid. It's cool to be uneducated. Yeah, I don't listen to scientists. Yeah, I don't buy that stuff. Like, I kind of do my own research. Like, you do your own research. Like, if a fucking doctor told me that, I would be a little concerned. Like, there's a reason there's medical journals. And of course there's exceptions. And of course there's, alternative medicine. Like, I'm very, very passionate about all of that. In the same way that, there's that narrow stream, and then there's the way things widen, and there are ways that things can exist outside of what's expected, but it all works on a continuum. I feel like you can't be Like, you can't be liberal with physics. You can't be liberal with how your car works. And so the same rules kind of hold true. Like, you have to, if you're going to go buy groceries, you have to use money. So, how do we work inside of that structure? And this is a lot of the magical thinking I remember coming from the disinformation company in the 90s, the Richard Metzger universe, which is he said if a tree falls in the woods and no one issues a press release, it didn't happen. And he was talking about that a magical way of thinking, a magical way of moving through the world in the age of technology is co-opting these systems. I think about Grant Morrison writing All-Star Superman and Arkham Asylum. I asked him what's it like writing? It was when he got Superman is when I asked him this question. I was like, what's it like writing Superman? And he said, I'm putting the same words out there that I always did. The difference is now I've got them coming out of the mouth of one of the most iconic figures in history. And I thought that's a lot of power. It's a lot of power to play with. I think it's great. And so to me, that's kind of, I think it's a good wrapping up point. Like, to me, that's the point, is this power exists. And, as Sean says, a hammer is a hammer. The problem with the tool analogy is that we've heard that from the gun nuts for so long that when we hear it, we're like, we cringe a little. I do. But it is kind of right. Like, and the follow-up is perfectly, as you said it, the problem with this technology is the only people meaningfully using the tool are the people that only care about hoarding. It's very Gollum. It's very Lord of the Rings. It's very Smaug the Dragon pulling in. So what happens if you use that technology with the idea to carve out spaces for humans to better interact with ourselves and each other? And I feel like that's the thing that my artistic community is missing. I feel like we have an opportunity here to utilize this. And hopefully anyone listening, chat with, the books and stuff. Like, I hope I've given you some ideas. It's working. It's helping me find more of my people. And, as people have been telling me, we've been seeing your ads everywhere. It's like, yeah, because you're one of my people. You're one of the people who emotionally and visually and all of that would lock in with what I'm doing. And so the computer, the people next door in their 2,000 years that they spent today are saying, hey, you should know about this guy Tom and what he's doing. So anyway, that is, that's our hour. I don't know. These are so crazy. But so thank you for joining us. Kat just sent this to me. So I'm just going to read it instead of pretending I'm saying it. That's bad grammar, Kat. I can't read that. Just basically that, yeah, we're we're glad to use Patreon to promote a real world connection. Again, that's the positive part of this tech. And first Thursday of every month, and always, if there's stuff that you want us to talk about, comment on it, send us a message before. Definitely comment in the Patreon stuff. I'm not great with getting in there. I'm trying to be better. We're trying to step that up. I know I've been saying that for a long time now, but in my perfect world, we would all be sitting in a room doing this and we would all be talking. I'm not entirely comfortable with speaking at you guys. But I'm doing it because this is what we have available to us, and I want to be present, and I want to be of service to my community. She is a cat bot. And Sean, again, that's a great point. Power attracts those already corrupt. Power does corrupt, though. You got to see Caligula. That's the whole point of the movie, is that power corrupts because you get it, and then you need more, and you want more. Whole other story. But as it relates to this technology, the people that see this technology There's a great thing on the Daily Show where they make fun of the guys that are talking about basically viewing people as the problem, as an obstacle to money making. And the sooner you can get rid of people and automate them, the more money you can make. It's like, well, yeah, that fucking decimates communities. That's not great. But they're thinking that way. They're thinking like a Bond villain, and not someone trying to build a community. And so, yeah, so we need to look at advertising. We need to look at technology. We need to look at these things and say, these are tools that we can use. We're allowed to, oh, cat, what are you doing? We're allowed to use them. We are allowed to use these technologies. We are not sacrificing our integrity by advertising. We are not sacrificing our integrity by using technology. In fact, I would argue it's kind of like anyone who wants to be president shouldn't have that job. Anyone really attracted to the power you can get with this tech probably is not the best person to have first access to it. So yeah, Chet, that's exactly it. The good people need to start using them. We need to start using them to promote books like The History of Mysticism and Art. We need to use it to promote the incredible, dark dreamscapes that you're putting into your work. Like, that's what we should be using this tech for. More meaningful material than just, kind of the bullshit content that just rattles everybody's cage. So that's it. We're 2 minutes over. You guys are amazing. I appreciate you immensely. Yeah, we'll talk more in the comments. And yeah, Chet, I'll totally come on. I would love to talk about this stuff with you. And, I worry that it alienates some people, but I feel like we're at the point now where it's a luxury to complain. It's a luxury to complain. This is a really crucial time. I guess the last thing I'll say about it is just be mindful that a lot of people in your ecosystem. I'm in an Art Nouveau group, and someone posted a picture of some fake Art Nouveau architecture. And probably 80% of the people in there said, "This is amazing. Where is this?" And so everyone is like, "Oh, it's AI art, you moron." And I'm like, no, you're missing the point. The point isn't that they can't tell that that building isn't real. The point is that they're not going to be able to tell if I show them a historical photo that I've faked. Or I show them something that says this politician said this or was in this place. Like, that's the problem, is the way that it's going to affect everything culturally. And so I think that educating people is important right now. And yeah, trying to raise the signal on our more thoughtful, creative work, instead of just kind of the dross that's out there. Anyway, thank you for being here, and I'll see you in the chat section. Thanks again.